Welcome everybody to the Friday tier list DPS Mythic Plus styles.
Hell
You've
yeah.
seen it from the title. And what do we have today, man?
We have all the DPSs for Mythic Plus, and we do want to make a short disclaimer. Listen, we're gonna look at the, super high keys, but you have to understand that if you want to do any 15, you can do it with
The
any
mount
of these
achievement, all that.
Yeah, everything is viable, as you can see on the graph here. This is for 15s right now.
Yeah.
You can play your spec, whatever, all right? So I know we do these tier lists, and a lot of people tend to have, different opinions about them, but at the end of the day,
fine.
yeah, play what you like, play what you think is fun, and remember, 15 keys, you can do one on any spec. And, this is how I like to keep our tier list organized.
And the best way to stay organized and productive is with Skillshare, the very sponsor of this video. Listen guys, one of the best things you can do for yourselves in these prime times
When not playing WoW.
is investing in yourself, and Skillshare provides you with just that. An online learning community with thousands of classes ranging from animation and video editing to marketing, music, graphic design, and so much more.
Yeah, man, Skillshare classes help build our way of producing content, and one of the biggest inspirations for our channel was the Productivity for Creatives by Thomas Frank. And man, did we learn the importance of a clean physical working space and a clean digital space too. Scheduling, templating, and having a correct mindset go a long way in creating videos such as we do. Now, to get you started, the first 1,000 of our subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. And after that, for under $10 a month, you get so much value, it's unreal. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And now, let's check how Assassination Rogue is doing.
Let's hit it! Man, Assassination hasn't gotten any love since.
Where's the love for Assassination?
The thing is, we're not gonna, if you haven't watched any of our previous videos, maybe you should, because we don't really want to see the same things over and over again, because this actually opens up avenues to discuss a little bit more about the spec, so we don't make this like 2 hours long.
Yeah, it could be.
Probably the main issue right now with Assassination, because if you've seen the 15s and up, pretty much performs very close to Sub and Outlaw, is that people just don't play it enough. There's no real reason to play it enough because it obviously doesn't offer that much.
I mean, when you think about the Rogue utility, you have the Outlaw, who's like the top dog, and it basically provides anything Rogue utility-wise, plus much more damage. So I think that's the main thing of Assassination Rogue. It's still a very fun spec to play. I still believe it's the easiest out of the Rogues to master and play. But it just lacks the damage.
It's in terms of how it overall performs. Obviously, it's in 15s. It's good enough to get you the 15s. It's very close. So you probably won't see a big difference between a very good assassination and a very good subtlety in a 15. But it's clear that it's kind of a D tier right now.
It's a D tier just based on what the numbers are currently running. All right, next up is the Frost Mage.
Frost Mage received a bunch of buffs.
Yes, and it has climbed higher a little bit onto the rankings. I mean,
but it's not higher than Arcane right now. It is a little bit indeed higher. It's not bottom of the tier, but with the buffs, as far as we know, we've played with our boy Percy in a couple of 11s and 12s. I think.
And Matt too also tried a little bit of Frost Mage. The thing about Frost Mage, like where you really want a Frost Mage in your team, and what I think is really valuable is during necrotic weeks, or the thing is, Frost Mage really delivers that slow, and it's really helpful. Like one of the biggest utilities. Plus, the intellect, the food for the healers, time warp exactly, and polymorph. You need a lot of CCs in order to do good. That being said, in terms of the damage profile, it cannot compete with the King.
The problem is that fire just does way too much damage.
Yeah, way too much.
I'm not sure if they were nerfed yet, or they're
they're not nerfed yet. No.
They're on line to be nerfed. But it's interesting that it doesn't do as well as Arcane, which is a little bit weird. This is the performance of the overall all of the classes right now, but I do feel like the slow is very strong, and I would put it all the way up. I think it's like kind of the bottom of the B tier, right?
Yeah, it's sort of the last on B tier.
It's the second to last, I feel, in the B tier. It's gonna set the tone for the rest. But we're moving on to Destro Warlock.
Oh baby,
which it's not Affliction, man.
I mean, what happened to the famous Destro Lock cleave?
The thing is, I think in BF the Destro Lock didn't change too. I mean, it's changed a little bit.
It's fine. It's fine. We mix him like.
I mean, you have Hellstones, you have Gates, but like Destro Warlock doesn't bring anything extra aside from what Affliction brings. So there's no speciality in Destro Warlock.
Yeah.
You have 2 target cleave, but you don't really want that because in the higher and higher in keys you go, you want to fight more packs. And as far as I know, it's probably Destro still plays heavy on the Rain of Fire, but if they don't, then they really lost their big ass AoE.
That's true. That's true. And you know, obviously you mentioned the Warlock utility, you know, the Gate, the Portal, you know, the Hellstone, pretty good. I just think that Destruction Warlock may shine a little bit more, I don't know, in Tyrannical maybe, where you need that single target damage much more prevalent.
Because we know that the Destro can pump single target, but yeah, it's probably because Infernal is on a longer cooldown than a minute and a half, which is probably better for demo, is that you don't really have it for the most important packs, so like a lot of the time you might have downtime. But it depends, obviously you have tools to deal with that, it's just that it doesn't seem like the Destro has the toolkit better than Demo and Affliction for sure.
So what do we put it? C or
I think it's C tier.
C tier.
Frost Mage is definitely a little bit better, so we're gonna put it into C tier for now.
All right. Now let's swing a little bit.
A little bit higher.
Action. Fury Warrior, ladies and gentlemen, Fury Warrior got really up. I mean, we saw it in our raid group with Lusty, and now we've seen on the locks, on the
buffs,
Mythic Plus.
It's the buffs, it's the gear, it's...
we always mention in the tier list, Fury Warrior in general will scale with gear, and apparently out of the specs, Fury in AoE tends to go a little bit better, and obviously you don't have the same intricacies as arms, but dude, look at him.
Fury was always ideally the better spec in AoE, because now that everybody has their AoE capped, Fury doesn't... There's not much that of a difference between Fury and all the other DPS specs. And as far as I know, Fury was always doing a little bit better than Arms in dungeons. It's just that Arms has that big ass explosion in damage with Blaze Storm, and it has really good 2 target cleave. But Fury definitely climbed up
to 8 tiers. So all you Fury boys out there, rejoice! Yes, it's good times. Good times for Fury. And I did want to mention a little bit on the utility of the Fury Warrior. Does Fury have Intervene as well, or is that only for arms?
I think all of them have them.
Yeah, you know, that's really important. And, you know, you cannot neglect the fact that you first off have an AoE fear, you have the kick, you have the stun, right? And also you have slows, right? Hamstring, right? That was like, again, similar to Frost Mage, that can really help out in the necrotic.
So hamstring, piercing howl, all of that.
Piercing howl,
And I haven't actually checked to see if Fury plays anger management, but with high octane plus Blushstorm is on a 1 minute cooldown, which is kind of the sweet spot. The sweet spot for where you want AoE cooldowns to be like kind of 1 minute, because in hierarchies, that's kind of how long it takes to fight a big pack. That from like the start of a pack to the start of the next one is kind of like a 1 minute thing.
All right, let's
moving
go
on to Arcane, which is very close to Frost. Now Arcane doesn't have the slow of Frost, but I feel like it has maybe a little bit more mobility.
It has more mobility, yeah. It has more mobility.
Depending on how you build your talents, and it's with mana management, I feel like it's maybe a little bit harder to play properly than Frost. I mean, we all know the meme of why you push Arcane Blast forever.
The cat meme.
But the difference between managing your mana properly and keeping your mana at a specific level so that when you need it, it's there, needs a little bit more know-how, needs a little bit more experience, so a little bit more practice. That's how I felt. And in Shadowlands, if you haven't played Arcane Mage yet, Arcane actually got a little bit of love, and its rotation has a few more buttons.
That's true. And in terms of utility, again, I think Frost Mage shines better in terms of utility.
I feel like if I would have to choose as a tank, I would like a Frost Mage because I do have need to kite. But Arcane Mage probably just has more damage, and as far as I know, it has crazy stupid single target burst.
Yeah, it does. So where we put this B tier?
It's a little bit above Frost Mage, but it's definitely B tier.
All right. Now next up, Havoc Demon Hunter.
And we see Havoc also probably scaling a little bit better with gear. Now, I don't remember exactly where it was last time, but...
it was decent, but it was definitely lower in our previous Mythic Plus tier list. Now, I mean, you cannot talk about Havoc Demon Hunter without all of the utility it brings. I mean,
Imprison and Mr. Turner Sight, let's just give that big ass pack with casters.
Yeah, you know, the Chaos brand as well, if you're playing early with casters.
Well, I mean, Fire Mage balance.
And also, man, I mean, how comfy do you feel as a tank with a Demon Hunter like a good demon hunter in your team, because you know you have the darkness that can save a lot of
the taunt blur, which I don't know if it works as much as better anymore, but you still have the immunity. It's very mobile. You can dodge a lot of stuff. Like the toolkit for Havoc is really good for Mythic Plus, probably because the damage was nerfed a little bit too much going to Shadowlands, and that just outscaled Outlaw and Windwalker a lot higher than Havoc. That's probably why, because Imprison is one of the incaps that lets you not get into combat once you pass.
Yeah, that's super useful.
That and Sap, those are the only two. That's probably why Rogue is also very high on the list, and that's probably why Havoc is maybe higher than what would be if he didn't have the utility, because the damage is one thing, but it's definitely
it's good. It's good. A lot of cleave, you know, we stun, single target stun, you know, the spells. There's a lot of good things happening to Demon Hunters, so definitely worthwhile in the list. We'll put it A tier, baby. It's an A tier.
It's a big gap between Havoc and the one lower too.
All right. Now let's move along to the brother of Fury, the more mature, I would say, out of the specs. Isn't that the right word?
It's Arms
Warrior. Yes.
Arms sees the pattern that it kind of it's pretty good. It does a lot of damage. Arms sees it's a trend that I've seen it in BFA, I've seen it in Legion. It's good at the start, but Fury outscales it. Usually takes a patch or two, but we can see it right now probably because of how the player power kind of scales. Arms is still really good. I mean, you have the warrior utility, you have the battle shout,
of course.
You have intervene, you have spell reflect if you need it. You have all of those good things, and rallying shout as well, right?
Rallying cry. Well, that's what I'm saying. Now Arms Warriors looks like it's a bit in the middle of the pack, but I remember in BFA the same thing, right? At some point Fury was taking up the kick, and then Arms was taking it up just because of the gear. Well, the corruption still.
Yeah, and so the thing is with BFA with Arms, you can bake more power into Bladestorm, but right now Bladestorm is just your only real AoE. I mean, you can cleave with sweeping strikes, but outside of that, that's maybe what's keeping Arms so low, because in terms of utility, they're pretty similar. And you could say that Arms may be a little bit more tanky, but Fury has a little bit more sustain.
Yeah, that's true. So where do we place?
It's definitely a tier difference. It's probably B tier.
It's probably a beer.
It's beer. It's doing a little bit better than the mages though.
All right. Super cool. Now let's go to one of Flame's personal favorites, the Demonology Warlock.
It's it dropped a little bit, I think, from last time we looked at it, but probably because Affliction just is played more and more as the season goes on, because people want to push probably higher and higher keys.
But it's better than Destro.
It's better than Destro. I think the damage profile that it can output fits the Mythic Plus scenario way better. You have more on-demand AoE with Implosion and everything.
Yep.
I think it's pretty good if you have to pick a Warlock spec and you don't really like Affliction demos. Definitely solid choice. You have the stun, which also silences now if the target cannot be stunned, right?
The big tyrant thingy with the circle. Yeah,
they changed that. I don't know how many iterations that had, but demo definitely one of the worst things that demo could bring to could add to a team is a lack of an interrupt.
Right. Yeah, I remember that talk. Jesus Christ, yeah.
Yeah, it was really stupid that happened, but it's definitely doing a little bit better than Destro. So I think demo goes at the bottom of the B tier. It's clearly there's a clear difference between Demo and Destro in terms of performance in the hierarchies, higher than 15s most likely. So I think it's closer to the mages, yeah.
Definitely. All right, on to one of my favorites, Subtlety Rogue, which I have played. And man, I don't know if this is like the scaling is weird or whatever, but I'm currently playing at 184 Atom level, and I was doing some damage, man. I mean, at some point I got to 78k AoE, and single target don't even get me started. So I can clearly see why Subtlety Rogue has, you know, good representation in the Mythic Plus world. And I do want to stress this out once again. You can play Assassination, Outlaw, or Subtlety at a 15, you'll do amazing. But so far, looking at these, you know, plus 20s and then forward on, they look pretty good. And again, you can obviously talk about the utility Rogue brings. Now, I'm gonna add to this, because Subtlety, just because of Shadow Dance, can add a little bit more extra utility. That's because you can stun a lot of mobs. Like when shit hits the fan, you can use your cheap shot to stun basically 4 mobs almost at the same time, while also you would using your kidney and blind and interrupts and so on. So I would think it's pretty useful if you play in your group with a decent sub rogue. You can really help out, especially as a tank or a healer. You can really bring that value on top of the amazing damage. So definitely we can look at a really, I don't know, high tier. What is it? An A tier?
Definitely A tier.
Going into A tier. Once again, I personally love this spec. I love this since day one. I cannot recommend enough for you guys to try it out. I know it can be daunting at the beginning, but nevertheless, let's move along to Frost DK, or Frost Knight, how I like to call it.
Frost Knight. Frost Knight hasn't seen any new changes in terms of balance. It's kind of dropped a little bit, probably because Unholy just kills way better, and Unholy is just way better, way better spec. And if you look at the Radar IO graph that we have on the screen right now, you can clearly see that. Even though, so this is the Radar IO graph is basically the popularity of the specs at 15 keys and higher. And when you look at the Warcraft logs graph, you can see that pretty much the performance is very close to each other in terms of 15 keys, but the popularity is different, which actually is a major factor in deciding exactly how the ranking goes, because it doesn't mean that it's not good, it's just not popular. No, a lot of people don't play it enough. And probably the best Unholy DKs, at least the biggest chunk of the good DKs, are going to be playing Unholy anyway. And if those would like gravitate towards Frost, maybe you would see Frost a tier 2 higher. But right now it's currently comfortably sitting, I think, at the bottom of the C tier. It has the utility that it has. It's a little bit less than what probably Unholy brings. You have Chains of Ice, you have Grip, you have Stun. You do have an AoE blind if you don't want to spec into Stun, but I don't know how much value that is. I guess it's something different other than
the thing with the AoE
brings.
blinds in Mythic Plus. It's pretty, pretty unsafe, because a lot of the times the cleaves and the AoEs might fuck it up. I remember when I was playing like Blinding Light on my Paladin, it was always something breaking it.
The things that you want to stop from casting will resume casting as soon as the blind breaks anyway. So maybe that's not that ideal, but it can help with kiting. I'm just saying.
But okay, C tier I think is pretty fine. Hoping for some more love for Frost. Now let's move to the shining star of this tier list so far, Beast Mastery Hunter. I mean, what the hell happened, man? I think we have to touch on the representation too.
Okay. I feel like Beastmaster, in terms of rotation, we're not gonna sugarcoat it. It's a little bit boring. It's definitely less boring than Marksman and way more boring than Survival.
Yeah, true.
The damage is there. There's decent enough damage. There's more than enough damage for you to clear 15. I have played my Beastmaster and I was, better than like at least 50% of the people that I was in group with. Pugging, of course.
But you can master your stuff.
It's as long as you know how to play it, it's gonna do a lot of damage. Enough for you to clear keys, but of course it doesn't do as much as Marksman. It doesn't have that big ass burst almost every pack. It has consistent high damage, which is very good, but you kind of really want burst. You want burst because between pools, especially in dungeons like Mist of Side where you have a lot of downtime, being able to maintain a high consistency damage output doesn't really help. Which is why it's also lower than Survival, because Survival also has a similar damage profile to Marksman, where if you have all your bombs ready and the Azra and everything, not the Azra, just the legendary, you'll just do a lot of burst up front, especially if you play Night Fate. We'll get to Survival in a second, but I think that's probably where Beastmaster suffers a lot, because all the utility is shared across.
I mean, again, if you're playing 15, BM can work out amazingly, and you have to remember the Hunter utility, especially for BM, right? I mean, apart from the trap and the stun, you also have the bloodlust, which is really important. And obviously it competes with Marksman, but I think Flame put it pretty clearly.
It suffers from the same. It's D tier. Suffers mainly from the same issues as Assassination, is that it doesn't necessarily have low damage, or at least trash low. But there are at least 2 other specs that are better in the same class, so that's kind of a problematic issue.
But still, nevertheless, you play BM, you're in a good spot. I mean, 15 keys and maybe even higher, you'll do just fine. Don't worry about it. Play what you like. All right, next up.
I wonder where the next one goes, man.
Oh my God, Fire Mage. Nothing has been said on Fire Mage from Blizzpar, at least from
it's interesting because I have seen I've seen the top Fire Mages, the crazy shit that they do. I have seen. And I don't know if you've watched MDI and see those Fire Mages. I don't know who was Echo or Limits. They were pulling, I think it was Echo. They were pulling like 2 or 3 packs with the first boss in Halls of Atonement. And the Fire Mage had like what, 30, 40, 50k DPS.
Something like that.
It was crazy. And Fire Mage is probably because Flame Strike is not AoE capped, which is a big factor into all of this.
I'm thinking that's the first thing they'll do after the MDI. They'll look at the cap for Flame Strike like, okay.
Maybe. I mean, the thing is, Flame Strike is, unless you like super prepare for an encounter with it, Flame Strike is not that easy to put out. It's not like a whirlwind for warriors,
That's
right?
very true, yeah.
So it's not, it has a long cast, you can, and it doesn't contribute to your crit fishing. Because if Pyroblast crits, then you can get another heating up and then transform into Hot Streak. But Flame Strike doesn't contribute to that. So there are downsides to casting Flame Strike, and I think Fire Mage is a good example of a decent spec. I don't like the fact that it does double my damage, but in terms of design, I feel like it's okay.
It's
maybe lower the overall damage a little bit. Maybe the skilling is a little bit too much.
Probably.
But it's clear that Fire Mage goes
S tier.
Our
first S tier, baby. Fire Mage definitely. I think we can put Fire Mage in all content as S tier.
Yeah,
definitely.
and it's probably one of the main factors that it's keeping there. It's probably because killing is being played and combustion has like a 1 minute and 15 seconds, kind of like that. If you can play right, that's probably where you can end up with combustion, and that's pretty good.
All right, Fire Mage rejoice. Let's move on to Enhancement, the former artist formerly known as Prince for Flame.
And man, no, I'm keeping my Enhancement geared, man. I'm waiting for a little bit of a buff because I've played it Enhancement. It has really good. It's kind of like BM. It's a little bit better than BM, where it has like
look
high.
at it. I mean, it's come on.
Yeah, but it's high consistent AoE damage. It's a little bit bursty, but like if I start and do like high burst and like I'm on number 1, my damage doesn't raise higher than that. And if a Fire Mage pops, or if Windwalker pops or anything else, they're just gonna overshadow me in terms of utility. And probably one of the main reasons with Enhancement being a little bit lower is also it's a very squishy spec where Elemental is at least ranged and it has Primal Elementalist to factor in that for Earth Elemental defensiveness.
Yeah, no, but still, man, you have to remember that Enhancement Shaman, well, Shamans in general, but more specific, if you want an Enhancement in your team, it has a lot of utility still, man. I mean, first off, you know, the Wind Fury Totem.
Oh, that's actually a big one because since seeing I was Havoc, Arms, Fury, they're melees in general, but these specs that actually work with auto attacks, where auto attacks don't just give white damage, they actually generate resource.
Hey man, I love your Wind Fury when I play my Feral. Now you can see my white damage just go up.
That's why damage is really good when you play with something that can actually generate resource with Demon Blades, Havocs, or warriors that generate rage with auto attacks. That's actually gonna be really good. Obviously, the utility is there with AoE stun, with Fear Breaks and Tremor. With Slow and Earthbind, purges a lot of kick, very fast kicks. So really good Bloodlust and all that.
It's super good for dungeons.
It's a really good spec, and clearly, if you look at the tier list, it's way up there with. I think it's all the way in B tier. It's close to Arms Warrior.
Very close.
It's
just
really,
a tad.
B tier is something that you can probably get 20s with.
No problem.
Maybe in a week or two, I can see. I think some of them already started getting 20s down, but they're pretty close, if not.
Definitely. A well-deserved B tier still. Nothing too sad on Enhancement. Now,
Enhancement has a bigger brother in Elemental, and I think it's probably a good reason. The good reason as to why Elemental is a little bit higher than Enhancement is because it kind of brings all the utility except for Wind Fury.
Yeah.
But it does bring Wind Rush Totem, which is really good. It brings Primal Elementalist, which is a big thing because the Primal Elementalist Elemental can tank a lot more dungeons, even though the Enhancement can't do that. But that one is a little bit better. It's tougher.
Tougher.
It's right because in hierarchies, my Enhancement Elemental just gets melted really quick.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Plus, you know, as you said, you know, all the good things an Enhancement can bring, except from Wind Fury, the Shaman can bring. You know, the range is really useful.
That's actually really good because a lot of affixes are kind of shit for melees right now.
That's what I'm saying. It's and you know, the damage profile overall looks a little bit better. But as you know, as the same with Enhancement, if you want an Elemental in your group, you're gonna do fine. Lots of good utility. You know, off heals, purges, interrupts, all of that. Plus, if you're a tank, you really love your Shaman in the group because it will definitely help you out.
It's really good, and I think Elemental is in a solid state. It seems like there's a big difference between Elemental and Havoc, so they have to be a tiered separate, but it's really good.
It's like at the margin.
I think it's leading the B tier, so it's pretty much the specs that kind of we play are kind of around this area. So it's fine, guys. You can have fun.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the shining star of the Warlock specs, Affliction Warlock.
Can you believe the 180?
How the world has changed.
In GFA, Affliction was literally at the bottom. It had like no ways of dealing with AoE, but with Malefic Rapture, obviously that changed. Affliction has a lot of damage, has a lot of spread. Malefic Rapture, again, is really good. Did I mention that Malefic Rapture is pretty good?
I think you should talk about Malefic Rapture.
Yeah, Malefic Rapture is good as shit. Hellstones are obviously pretty good because with Prideful there's a lot of AoE damage incoming, and that Hellstone can really save up around the global of a healer. So you don't have to do like a chain heal or
like utilities.
Yeah, it's pretty good. The gate also helps. Obviously, it always helps. And
but I think when we're talking about any Warlock spec, the utility we all know is super good, but damn, Affliction just pumps it up damage-wise. That's it. No questions asked.
All right, so, you got me convinced, man.
Is this like to the brink of between the A and S?
Yeah. It's very close to Fury.
Up, right?
It's really close to Fury, but there's a difference between what Affliction can bring and what the next spec can bring. It's actually there.
Who is
the next one? It's the Windwalker. Now we had we've seen Windwalker rise lately, and
I'm happy for him. I cannot be more happy.
Windwalker was always at least decent in keys in BFA. I cannot stress how good Ring of Peace is.
Yes. Well, I mean, utility-wise,
you're essentially a game designer creating impassable terrain. It's like, hey, this part, mobs cannot go through this part.
Yeah,
it's good. It has a lot of damage. It has a lot of on-demand damage. It's like a way better enhancement, because everything that enhancement can do with like cleaving frost shocks, like that crit for a lot of damage, but Windwalker can do pretty much all the time with the Fist of Fury. Not to mention that with the legendary Invoker's Delight, I think it's called. Once you've popped in Zuen, you get 33% haste.
Oh, there you go, baby.
And with the weapon,
a bloodlust, baby.
That's way better than a bloodlust, because that actually the reason it works so well is because with Weapons of Order, which is kind of like probably the best Covenant ability for Windwalkers, you time it well and you get a lot of reset and a lot of Fist of Fury in AoE, which is going to be really, really, really good.
No. And Windwalker is performing at a high tier in both raids and dungeons.
It's one of the few specs that has cleared 24s and higher.
Yeah. It's definitely up there. And again, as a Windwalker, right now, you're definitely the shiniest melee out of all of them.
It's probably one of the best melees right now.
Yeah. And again, you touched on the utility. Cannot forget about Incap, the AoE stun. Plus the fact that, in a couple of mobs, let's speak Sanguine, right? Windwalker monks have a Mortal Strike effect, and the heal reduction in Sanguine sometimes is really, really good. Apart from other mobs that can heal each other, and that applies.
There's also those in Theater of Pain, those abominations that like do Devouring Bite or whatever it's called, that they heal themselves.
That too.
That's good. I would definitely see it up there. And if you're playing with a marksman, obviously the physical damage debuff is going to be really good. It's definitely a different
shining star
between it and Affliction.
Definitely. Okay, Retribution Paladin, the one that didn't make it into Flame's soul, I guess, or Soul of Desires.
Don't mind me, man. Don't mind me.
Retribution Paladin, as many of the specs we talked about so far, is like super viable in almost any content. And again, cannot stress this enough, if you want to do 15, 16, 17s, it will wreck shit. Now, the thing about Ret Paladins is, why would you want a Ret Paladin in your plus whatever key?
Well, because they've made the utility kind of like all around for all the Paladin specs. You're definitely going to have a Pro Paladin, which seems to be one of the tanks that are clearing high keys right now. Always just like creeping a little bit. And Holy Paladin has the most amount of damage out of all of the healers.
Jesus,
So if you still need damage and you want a Paladin, probably Holy Paladin might be a little bit better. But that's probably why it sees a dip in popularity, but the damage is there, guys. The damage with Final Reckoning being on a 1 minute cooldown is
perfect. It's what Ret Paladin needed.
If I don't know if people play this enough, but I would play Execution Sentence on Prideful. Just melt that Prideful down, man.
And also, you also have the super short 6-second stun from Hammer of Justice. You also have the heals, the off heals. Now, Ret Paladins can be super helpful for healers because of Word of Glory. Super strong spot healing on top of, maybe specking into Repentance and helping out, or Blinding Light. Well, let's say Blinding Light.
We already talked about how good Bop is, and if you don't know how good Bop is, you haven't played with a good Paladin yet, and I'm sorry to say this.
It's very good. So definitely a strong spec within the Mythic Plus tier list.
Definitely a B tier.
Definitely B tier for sure. Ret Paladins, Rejoice, it's a really good spot. I don't think we've, maybe except Legion, Ret Paladins didn't really see that much representation in Mythic Plus, but look at this. Super good. I'm happy for him. All right. Second melee star, Outlaw Rogues. Now, this is no surprise at this point.
I feel like we did say that Windwalker is maybe the best melee spec in the game, probably overall.
I still feel like that.
It's hard because Outlaw does have sap, which is Incap is not what sap does. It still puts you into combat.
But in order to do sap, you have to be invisible.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I actually pulled back to back without letting him get into stuff. So I feel the pain. Yeah. But Outlaw has risen in the ranks and is currently right now the second best performing spec overall. Okay, guys, this is like an overall assessment of all the numbers. It's an even out. That doesn't mean that Outlaw is gonna be not as good as a fire mage and always better than a balanced druid. That's not really how this works. It's, you know, working with numbers, getting an average. But I mean, we've talked about the rogue utility. Everything else that sub and assassination can do in terms of utility, Outlaw does better.
Well, there's the thing. Outlaw also has Gauge, which is super good. That's in terms of utility. And you know, I think one of the best things Outlaw has going for it is like the mechanic of reducing your cooldowns all the time.
That works for Vanish at least.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You know, it's apart from the super big damage profile, and it can deliver both single target and AoE. That's the thing about Outlaw as opposed to maybe BFA. Right, because in Tyrannical, in Tyrannical, you can have your Outlaw deal, you know, super good damage AOE, and then when the boss fight comes, same thing, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Right now, it's a pretty good spec. So if you're looking at pushing keys with Rogue or just getting that 15 achievement, that mount, that cool ass fucking mount, Outlaw is probably one of the best spec that you can pick, and it's definitely high up there.
S tier.
Just between Monk and Mage and some other specs. But we're moving on.
Moving on to the Shadow Priest. And look at that! Look at that!
It's one of the top casters. It has seen worse days actually. I think it's climbing steadily better and better because Shadow did change. It's probably one of the specs that changed the most. We did say this before, but it does. Shadow scales with back-to-back pulls. As far as I know, it's still kind of the same.
That's the thing. If your tank doesn't know how to handle it, similar to this, but like if you don't do back-to-back pulls, you're gonna lose a lot in damage.
Yeah, the momentum kind of transfers from one pull to the other, so you don't really want a lot of time. And with the meta seeing Resto Shamans not needing as much drinking as possible, and you're probably even having a Havoc Demon Hunter to bring out that magic debuff, that's also pretty good. It might not work that well with a rogue or a feral in your group because they kind of want to get into stealth. But that being said, I mean, it does bring fortitude. It brings
what else? I mean, the super utility, man. You know, you have the shields to help out. You have the mends to help out. The vampiric embrace as well.
Hybrid heals.
Very good in terms of hybrid, yes, and also stuns, silence, fear. There's a lot of goodness in the toolkit for the Shadow Priest. So in terms of utility, you can always bring it in.
And Mind Soothe, by the way.
Mind Soothe, yes.
With Mind Soothe, you can do some pretty cool skips, by the way. And obviously leaps, you can leap of faith, you can get, if somebody's out of position, that's a great savior. Not like some other priests we know, but hey, Shadow Priest has definitely risen up. It's a clear A tier. Now it seems to be just below Fury Warrior, but their performance seems to be very close.
Put it over there.
Put it over there, all right.
Okay. Now let's go on to our favorite. I think we can speak on our favorite hunter spec.
Yeah, it's definitely. I wasn't particularly sure because I did play the new marks when it was pretty fun, but going back into survival because spoiler alert, we're gonna have the survival guide coming pretty soon. Yeah. And I have been speaking with one of the best survival speaking with one of the best survivals in the game right now because survival is a little bit different right now with Night Fae and Korain, which actually has the wild tactics. You probably know that you do 75.
I know.
Like
not too good for feral, but
it's actually really good for survival because if you unlock the full tree and you get first strike at the end of the tree, you have crit 100. What it's 100% crit chance overall.
I haven't played.
It's you get a lot of crit and a lot more damage for mobs that are over 75% HP. Now, why is that so important for survival? Is because a lot of the damage that survival outputs is a lot of burst up front. With all of the bombs and the carves and the legendaries, we have all 3 bomb charges ready to go. Well, close. It's 2 charges, but you know, the third one gets there really quick. It has a lot of bursts to get packs down. The damage is there, and with Wild Spirits, obviously, it's all there. The utility is pretty much all there. You do have a shorter kick, which can be a big asset as opposed to Beastmaster, because right now, if you kind of want to compare survival, you probably compare it with Beastmaster before you're going to compare it with MM. the damage is there. The damage is there. It's just that the utility is a little bit better for MM because, you know, you have ranged. But the Bloodlust does not come at a loss with survival because you still have a pet.
Yeah.
So it's a good mix between what MM can bring and what BM can bring. So it's kind of in between.
But that being said, I think we can definitely put it into a C tier.
Yeah, I think it's maybe one of the best C tier specs
I think
right now.
the C tier.
Mostly because Marksman is so much better at.
I mean, yeah, it's survival is looking better than you know, previous weeks we talked about it. So surely
it's not at the bottom anymore.
Yeah, it's doing good. And again, another spec that can be plus 15, no problem.
So
top
fun
meters.
to play, man. So fun, so rewarding.
All right, a Feral Druid, my main spec for Shadowlands. Feral Druid is basically really dependent on how long and what the composition is, because if you have like high AoE burst classes in your group, your dots will not tick to that fast in order to, you know, get value. That being said, Feral Druid can do some amazing damage. The fact that you can spread out all of your rips through Primal Rat, and also convoke, like if it's a really scary mob. And remember, as a Feral Druid, you can always spec into balance and pop Heart of the Wild and convoke like that, and you can get some pretty amazing numbers as you know, as a Feral spec into balance affinity. That being said, I think where Feral shines in keys is mostly tyrannical because the single target is insane. I would say it would rival Subtlety at this point.
Oh, really? Because the logs would say differently, but that's probably because Boomy is also...
I mean, yeah, we have to take into account all of the affixes as well, but overall, if you play Feral Druid, I mean, the utility of the Druid is there. You balance affinity, right? You can get the Typhoon.
Those roots in Plaguefall and Mr. Turner Scythe.
Oh yeah, that's the insta roots as well. You know, the stuns, off heals as well. You know, there's a lot of goodness for the Feral, so definitely worth playing. And I think it's in the B tier.
Yeah, it's close to Red apparently.
Yeah,
it's a little bit better than Arcane.
I mean, listen, I was always a little bit disappointed on Feral because I didn't really do that much damage AoE, but now I'm starting to feel it more and more, and it is pretty decent.
The keys are getting higher, so the mobs last a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's the thing. As more you go into the keys and you have, you know, different comps, your bleeds will do a lot more damage. So yeah.
All right.
Cool. Let's move along.
We've mentioned this one before, and it's no surprise right now. It's interesting because in raids it kind of dropped a little bit more. If you've seen our last week's video, and you should check it out for this one. But in dungeons it's still pretty good because Volley is one of the newer additions, which we mentioned before, but maybe we haven't put enough emphasis on it because it does give you trick shots. Now Volley, depending on how much haste you have, can let you at least cleave one aim shot and one rapid fire, and that's instant. And you can start it off really good with double tap, and all that is really good. And it's on a, what is it, a 45-second or 1 minute cooldown? It's close, it's very close to that. And even outside of that, you have Wild Spirits, which is a big ass burst cooldown, and even outside of that, you just have high AoE damage with trick shots and aim shots, and the legendary with Serpent Sting is really good. The utility is really good, you're ranged.
Yeah, we talked about the Hunter utility so far. I mean, you know, you have the damage, you have the utility. It's no surprise that, you know, right now, this bad boy is an S tier,
and it's fun to see Marksman being high. It's very close to Windwalker, but it's definitely an S tier. It's leagues above pretty much all the other specs. And speaking of leagues above,
Balanced Druid. And I will not say my opinion about Balanced Druid because I tried it.
I was about to ask, man, you need to let people know about the balance.
So I can see, so the balanced damage profile, first of all, we have to talk about that. Right, and I know a lot of Balanced Druid play Kyrian, you know, with the Kindred Spirits thing. That's
dungeons,
fine in dungeons, but that's because you always tend to pair it up with a Fire Mage, and that's where a lot of your burst comes from as a Kyrian, right? Like you get the Kindred Spirits as a Boomkin, and you pair it up with one of the bursts.
That only works with Fire Mage.
No, just the Fire Mage just have the huge burst, and that's why. Well, if you don't have a Fire Mage in your group, you can pick whatever, but usually you pick one bursty motherfucker. That's it. If you play Night Fade, then obviously Convoke will do amazing damage as well. The mechanic of Balanced Druid, now this from a personal experience, because I did try it, you know, in dungeons and raids and arenas or whatever, you know, I just don't feel it. It's not for me, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
But I can see, you know, I can see how this has this representation in the Mythic Plus, just because this spec basically always has AoE on, right? You have to maintain your Starfall all the time in dungeons, And once you get into eclipses, you know, you empower a lot of that. Plus you get super huge damage with star surges in your eclipses. And you know, the lunar eclipse is basically the AoE eclipse that you have, and that shit is also buffed. And you have the starfire, which is cleave damage. It's, you know, pretty complete package for AoE. This is
does seem like with the damage being regulated, the toolkit that Boomy has. And let's not forget Trents. Trents are good.
Oh my god, yeah, Trents, like one of the biggest utility you can have as a Boomy is the Trent thing. Plus, you know, you get Ursal's Vortex as well.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Typhoon or Vortex, if you spec into Resto Affinity, you get Vortex.
You go into Resto mostly in dungeons, so you help out with the heals too. So definitely another S tier.
I think it's better than Marksman right now.
It is. Yeah, it's
right.
number 3. Okay, and the last one. This one also used to be among the first, the spec in Mythic Plus
it's because it has a lot of upfront damage and it scales really well. Its mastery did get nerfed, but it was also funny because when it was like pumping really hard, it didn't have its best legendary. So that's a little bit hilarious. But Unholy DK is definitely the best DK specs.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of a different playstyle right now. You don't have to like spread wounds as much and just pop them very strategically, which was fun in BFA. But because you don't have to do that, it's maybe a little bit easier to play, although you do have a little bit more buttons.
I might get into it then.
And what's actually really cool with Unholy is that you're probably going to play Army of the Damned most of the time. And what that means is that you'll have Army of the Dead a bunch of times in the dungeon. You'll have your Apocalypse, you'll have your that transformation, you have it reduced cooldown anyway, but I think all of the major cooldowns that Unholy has, except for Unholy Blight, are reduced. If the more you spend running power. So that's probably why it's also very, very high up the list.
Plus the Unholy utility, I mean the DK utility overall, right? Like the grip, you know, the slows, the interrupt, one of the biggest thing. I mean, we don't have to touch on this. Anti-magic zone, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty good though. 20% magic damage reduction, like, dude, you can survive Pridefalls really well with that. You have it for almost every Pridefall.
Yes.
And also like the last boss in Halls of Atonement, if you don't have a DK for that, your healer is going to suffer a little bit.
Yes, indeed.
Especially on Tyrannical, but definitely Unholy DK is in a very solid state. Definitely very solid in A tier.
Yeah, A tier. And it's just below Shadow Priest. And
it does seem like we have fewer and fewer specs in C and D tier. Just looking at the tier list, which is pretty good.
It's pretty good. It shows that, you know, the game is getting into a bit more of a healthier state. Obviously, there's outliers and still things that need to be worked on. Our fire mages, I see. But nevertheless, it's looking pretty good so far. This is the final list. I'm happy to see, like, you know, Windwalker again, as in our previous tier list. Windwalker deserves a really high spot because it's one of those specs that you really need to master properly to pull off. And when you pull it off, you get those high numbers.
Yeah, there's a difference. And playing with the Dance of Chi-Ji, and I don't know what the passive is called that builds up damage in your spinning crane kick. I forgot the name of it. But if you play with that properly as well, you can do some crazy bursts. So I think the tier list is looking pretty good. Remember, guys, that this is just in terms of overall performance over the course of a lot of people. Not everybody logs their keys. People who are doing probably high keys, they're probably doing offline so that they don't give out their strategies to MDI. So take this with a grain of salt. If you want to do your 15s and get your mount, you can play any spec in the game that you want.
Check the graph right now. Check the graph right now. Look at the differences in all of these specs right now. This is from 15s, right? So you can play whatever you want, okay? The purpose of these videos is just to talk about the meta and how it's shifting from on a weekly basis. Well, we're basically doing this. So it's more like on a 4-week basis because our last tier list for Mythic Plus DPS was 4 weeks ago. So there's a lot more time to change it in. But that being said, we always advocate to play what you like. You have the proof now from the logs as well that anything can do well. So,
play what you like. This is it for this week's video. Obviously, we do this every Friday. You should check next week as well. And we do other videos on our channel.
Yeah, we do other videos. Thanks to all of our Patreons because they support a lot of this content that we do. We have the class guides, we have the Friday tier list videos, we have the MoCast podcast, which is out. I don't know if you heard or
by
check
this
it
time
out.
We have at least one episode out, depending on when you're watching this. Make sure to catch us on twitch.tv/Marcelian online, where we do stream, and you can catch us playing pretty much all of these specs eventually and doing Dungeons and Raids with you guys.
All right. That being said, you guys have a great weekend ahead. See y'all. Later.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.